All right, everybody, so welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. So today we're going to be talking about cold fronts in the fall. So cold fronts can be difficult, especially if you kind of have that, I don't know what to call it, but it's an issue that I struggled with for years. It's kind of like you get on a real good bite and then you go the next day and some weather changes happen, or maybe next week and some weather changes happen and things get it gets off, and it's like you just can't put the puzzle piece together. You'll catch a fish here, catch a fish there. That's kind of like what happens in fall cold fronts, but what the fish do is actually really simple. Either way, I'm going to explain it to you and talk to you about some baits that I use for specific reasons, so stay tuned. There's something you don't want to miss. All right, so before we jump into everything, I just want to let you know all the baits and stuff will be linked down in the description. So any of the companies that I work with and stuff, all their websites and stuff will be linked down in the description. With Thunderhawk, you can use CPosey20, you'll get 20% off. With Salty Captain, you can use Colton15 in all caps. And you'll get 15% off your order. It helps me out and helps those guys out. So let's talk about a cold front. So, cold front is when, that cold air starts moving in, you start getting a lot of winds. Some lakes, especially shallow lakes, your water's going to kind of muddy up. Maybe if you're not necessarily in a shallow lake, maybe it's shallow on one end, the other end it's not. It's, one end will muddy up, the other end won't. So, whether you're fishing stained water or whether you're fishing kind of clean, clear water, maybe just a little bit of coloration to the water. But, either way, these baits, it's kind of going to cover all that and for specific reasons. So let's talk about what the fish do. That's the main thing. So what does these fish do? The cold front moves in and, before, it's kind of like what we've been dealing with right now. These fish are roaming everywhere. They're chasing bait, they're chasing brim, they're eating crawfish, they're just munching and getting ready for winter. You can push up in the pockets, you can push up in the backs of creeks, you can fish the main lake and you're going to catch fish, but no matter where you go, whether it's the main lake, the pockets, or the creeks, you're still going to find that, maybe those fish aren't exactly where they were. What does these fish do? They'll move from areas like to my left here, it goes all the way to the very back of a creek. And there's all kinds of laydowns in this entire creek. And what'll happen is when that cold front comes through, these fish want to get tight to cover. They want to get tight to cover, like basically their lateral lines right up against the cover, and it's like they all just huddle up together. And one fall we actually come back up in this creek that I'm in right now, and there's a laydown right beside me here. And on this laydown, a cold front had passed through, and we sit there and caught like 50 spotted bass just off that one laydown. They'll huddle up real close together. Now, let's say you're fishing a lake, and you're fishing the main lake or river system, either one, and you got docks. You got a lot of docks on your lake or your river system. Those fish will start congregating to those docks, especially those docks that's closer to that deeper water. Why? Because they can move down, and the water's more stable. There may not be a whole lot of current. There may not be just a bunch of different factors, but they can move up and down pretty easy and adjust their temperature of their body, because these fish, when it's cold, they're cold. When it's hot, they're hot. So anytime they can be comfortable, it's kind of like, the way that I always think about it, it's kind of like you being in your house and, one room's 68 degrees, the next room's 55 degrees, and the other room's 110 degrees. One of those, you're going to be miserably hot. The other one, you're going to have to put some clothes on because you're going to be cold. The other one, it can be comfortable, okay? It can be real comfortable. So you can kind of wear what you want and, just kind of chill out. And that's kind of the way that I think the fish or think about it, in a sense, but just a small metaphor. But either way, so let's talk about some baits that you can use to target these fish when these cold fronts come through and they're relating tight to cover. And what I suggest to do is to cover every piece of cover that you can see with your eyes, especially isolated cover. If there's one lay down on one side of a bank and it's close to deep water, do not pass that up. Always go to it and see if there's fish on it. Let's talk about some baits you can use, close to, cover. Okay, so, laydowns and docks. I throw this bait a whole lot. This is the Mouse Head by Thunderhawk Lures. It's a grass jig. And you know, you can put a rage crawl on it, you can put swim baits on it, whatever you prefer to run on your swim jig. But the main thing is, you know, that head's flat so I can skip this bait, because a lot of times these fish will position themselves like maybe in the cover, and you may have to position your boat on the side of the cover and try to skip that jig in between there or something like that. Or if they're at the back side of a dock or something like that, you know, you're able to skip this bait. That's one of the main things, and it comes through cover really, really well. But you know, your natural colors is going to really shine. Unless your water's muddy, then you know, you may want to integrate some orange, some black and blue or something like that. But typically I'm going to stick to my natural colors. This is like a green pumpkin with a little bit of, you know, that green and black in the skirt, and then it's got that, you know, sharp blue in it. And it can kind of mimic multiple things. That's one of the things. Don't get too caught up on your colors with like your jigs and stuff. Really pay attention to your trailer, because you can really adjust the contrast of the bait just with the trailer. It'll save you a lot of money anyways. But you know, either way, you know, some type of swim jig, something like that, that you can cover a lot of water with, that you can skip up into very, very tight places, or docks or anything like that. A swim jig is going to be really, really great. And sometimes these fish will position off of grass lines. So like right up against grass lines that's close to deep water, they'll position themselves right off of it. So, you know, a swim jig's a great way to come through the grass and then right off the edge, because sometimes they just won't eat it unless it's coming off of the grass for some reason. The next one I want to talk about is one that, you know, everybody talks about all different times of year, but you know, a football head jig or a round head jig, any type of jig that you feel comfortable with in a natural color. So this is like a PB&J color. This is made by Hags Baits. It's a tungsten jig. Any kind of like football head jig or anything like that, sometimes they want a slower fall rate and sometimes they want a faster fall rate. So I always suggest, you know, get a 3/8, a half, and a 3/4 ounce. And that way you kind of got all your bases covered. Stick to your natural colors, your browns, your blacks, your black and blues, green pumpkin, anything like that that can mimic natural colors. Always, you know, you can adjust the contrast with trailers that you put on your bait. So I typically like, on a football head jig, I typically like to run either the Yum Christie crawl, and I'll cut a little bit off of it, but it's got a faster fall rate, okay? If I need a little bit slower fall rate and a little bit more action, a little bit more vibration, I'll go to the rage crawl, rage chunk, whatever you want to call it. But you can buy the rage crawls. That's what I do a lot of times. I'll just buy the rage crawls, and then I'll cut them however short I need them to put them up on my jigs and stuff like that. But you know, a round head or a football head jig, you're going to really get up in deep cover brush and stuff like that, and you're going to be able to get out a lot easier and a lot more efficient than you will with other baits. I'm not going to say you're not going to get hung up, because obviously you're going to get hung up from time to time, but you know, with this bait, some type of a football head jig or anything like that, you can, you know, get the bait in there efficiently and keep the bait in their face if you need to, and bring that bait out. And typically it targets, you know, bigger fish. That's one of the cool things about jigs. You're going to catch a lot of big fish off of jigs. If you're like me and you love covering water, I have a hard time, even if I find fish sitting on fish, if I cannot get them to react pretty quickly. And one of the things that I definitely like to do during cold fronts, especially during the fall, is use moving baits, because number one, it's cold, and I don't really want to be sitting still in the cold, if you get what I'm saying. I want to be moving. I want to get my metabolism up. I want to get, you know, I want to be warm, basically. I do not like cold weather. So one of the ways that I do that is with a square bill. So this is the A10 square bill by Thunderhawk, and the only reason I choose this square bill over any other, especially right now, like during cold fronts and stuff, is because the way this bait was designed, it runs really hard nose down, and it hunts very aggressively, but it comes through cover so much easier than any other square bill. I know the face of it is kind of, or the bill is kind of weird, but it's built like that for a reason. That way this bait sits really hard nose down, and when this bait hits cover, it rolls, okay? It rolls over that cover, and it makes it a lot easier when you're targeting fish that are really close to cover, and that's what's going to be happening during the cold front. But you know, stick to your natural colors, you know, your brim colors, your shad colors, crawl colors. You know, I highly suggest anytime the water gets a pretty good bit of stain on it, go to your bright crawl colors, and you're going to notice a huge difference and your bites. Now, another one that I want to talk about that I have a lot of fun with, and it's really hard for me to put this bait down any time of year, and you know, that's a spinner bait. I absolutely love a spinner bait, and this is the War Eagle. Multiple different sizes, and what I always suggest do, buy a 1/4 ounce and a 3/8 ounce when it comes to War Eagle, because the 1/4 ounce and the 3/8 ounce is going to kind of cover every basis you can imagine on your lakes. But you know, I highly suggest having at least one gold blade when those cold fronts come through. I don't know why, but it seems like to me gold, it may just be confidence that I have in the bait, but it seems like that little bit of gold in the bait just helps them target the bait a lot better, and your hang up ratio is a lot better. So you know, either way, your 1/4 ounce, typically if there's not a whole lot of wind, and typically during a cold front, there's either two ways that it goes. After the cold front, depending on how far out you are from when the cold front happened, it's going to be just slick calm. That's it. And then other times you're going to have a lot of wind, and it's going to be miserable out there. So you know, when there's a lot of wind, I'm going to throw the 3/8 ounce. But now, let's say you need to go bigger. Simply because the wind's really heavy, go up to your 3/4 or something like that. But I've rarely found times where I've had to use 3/4 ounce or anything like that when it comes to spinner baits. Now on, you know, fisheries where you have big gizzard shad and stuff like that, that can, you know, definitely be a factor, having, you know, that 3/4 ounce spinner bait size. But you know, either way, guys, I mean, it's very simple. You know, you're gonna start seeing, you know, before the cold fronts hit, you're going to start seeing fish just moving. They're going to be migrating in and out of creeks, pinch points, stuff like that. If you're not familiar with pinch point, what that is a place where it narrows down like a bridge or something like that, where fish have to go back, kind of like bottlenecks, to go back to the back of a creek or a secondary point or something like that, wherever these fish are migrating to. And you'll find those areas pretty easy, because once you bump into them, you'll sit there and catch multiple fish. But you know, you're going to find that these fish are migrating a lot. They're moving back and forth between the main, they're moving back and forth between pockets, they're moving back and forth between, you know, the backs of creeks and stuff. And a lot of times when you find those fish in the backs of creeks, they're going to be back there for a while. I'm a week and a half out from when I found these fish in the back of this creek at the very back, and they are still back there just a munching. So you know, they're going to be in those same spots for a long time. Now, with that being said, just remember, when those cold fronts come through, start looking for cover. Start looking for isolated pieces of cover, or structure cover, whatever. But you know, look for isolated places of cover, and then just go through different parts of cover, and just you'll kind of figure it out. You know, if you start catching them in the middle of a laydown, you know, the next laydown you go to that's set up pretty similar to that one, you're going to probably catch them in the middle, and then you've got a pattern. Then you know, hey, I need to worry about the middle of these laydowns as I hit. And at any part during the day, it can change. Those fish can move out and start migrating again. So, you know, you just pay real close attention to that. Remember, the fish are going to get close to cover. They're going to get up under docks. They're going to get close to deep water. And that way they can move up and down. And, you know, just watch your electronics. If you don't have electronics, that's cool. You don't need them to catch fish. But, you know, just keep your eyes open, your ears open, and just pay attention to what the fish are telling you. Guys, I hope the video helps you. If it did, make sure to like, subscribe. Helps me out a whole lot. If you have any questions at all, drop a comment down below, or if you just want to talk bass fishing. I love talking bass fishing with you guys, so just drop a comment if you feel like it. Also, you know, the stores are open, so you know, you can order your shirts, hats, whatever you want to do. Any kind of Colton Posey Fishing merchandise that we have at the time, you can check it out. $25 shipped to your door. Don't forget, down in the description, I've got everything linked as far as my sponsors, all these baits that we talked about. Either way, guys, I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.